Well, well, what has the cat dragged in today? It's a video tutorial about creating an actual playable level. So far in our little stealth game here, we've been working entirely out of a test level. I don't want to build my actual gameplay level off of this thing. I want to leave this as a test level so that way if I come back to add more features or add more functionality, my test level is ready to go. Or if in the process of playing the game, I find an error, it could be easier to try to track down and debug that error in the test level. So, in order to accomplish this idea of I want to be able to take all of this functionality and move it to a different level, which is indeed is something that you're going to be doing a lot in game development, we need to prep some things. First thing I'm going to do is in my assets folder here is that I am going to create a prefabs folder. So right click, create folder, prefabs, navigate into that. And I'm going to have to create some new prefabs. And while I'm at it, clean up a few things. Now, you don't have to do this. But when I'm building new prefabs off of existing prefabs, I prefer to totally break the link and then create new prefabs off of that. So on player, I'm going to right click on it. I'm going to select prefab, and I'm going to tell it to unpack completely. That utterly removes all prefab references to everything in this game object. Nothing in here has a prefab link anymore. I am then going to come in here and delete out this game character male face game object reference because this is my player, so I'm using the female face. And then I am going to create this as a prefab. So I'm going to drag it down into my prefabs area, and there we go. Now I have my player prefab. I'm now going to do the same with enemy. I'm going to right click, prefab, unpack completely. I'm going to get rid of the character female face reference and then create a prefab out of this. For the goal, the chicken, again, I'm going to do the same thing. There's nothing that I need to clean up here, but I still want to break all the prefab references. So I'm going to unpack it completely and create a new prefab. By breaking the prefab links completely, it's just an extra step that helps me know for certain that any other links that those objects might have had have been broken. And if I want to modify these objects, prefabs, I come here to modify anything and everything. Now, I do have the issue of worrying about my scene variables. The scene variables doesn't work particularly well as a prefab, but we can try it. Create it as a prefab and have those scene variables. Now, there is a template system that you can use in Unity, but that is a little bit fidgety and not fully within the scope of what I want to cover within this video. Do keep in mind that that is an option. You can set up a sort of a prototype template style level and create new levels based off of that. So now that I have my prefabs created, I'm going to make sure that this scene is saved, and I am going to create a new blank basic built-in scene here. I do want to immediately get rid of the main camera because that's going to be on my character controller. I'm going to drag in the scene variables, drag in my player, and I'm going to make sure that the player gets reset. to the origin, and I'm going to start building my level off of here. Just like I did previously, only, or maybe slightly different, I am going to create an empty game object. I'm going to call tiles. I'm going to go into the polygon starter, prefab, and I'm going to find the building floor 5x5. I'm going to snap increment of 1, which is a little bit low, but yeah, that's fine. And I'm going to directly add that to my tiles game object. I'm going to reset its position. Whoops, and also realize that tiles needs to be reset as well. Okay. Roughly start the player in the center and start building out the level. Now, I want to eventually I'll need to add in the goal. And I'm also going to need to add in walls because I don't want the player to be able to fall off the edge of the world. And all I'm going to do for walls is I'm going to take the building block one by one. I'm going to add that in, again, directly to my tiles collection here. Go ahead and make sure it is reset. It's at 0, 0. Excellent. Control drag so that it stays snapped. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to manipulate the scale as needed on this to act as a boundary. And I'm going to keep it in as best I can to 5x5 chunks. Now, in some instances, I'm going to have it more than 5x5. So, for example, here, duplicate it and, oops, and rotate it. Again, control drag, so it's rotating on a snap. I don't really want to have those missing spaces there, so here I will change my scale to 7. And there we go. Now I've got walls that I can set up. And for this next step, I'm going to try at least to do a time lapse because there's not really much for me to say with regards to actually setting up the level. So I'm just going to get my level set up and then I'll check back in. Okay, and that is the base layout that I am going to use for this. Now, because I know that, hold off on that step yet. I was going to say I'm going to turn everything static, but there's still a few more pieces that I need to put into this. But before I do that, I'm going to put in my goal and my enemies. So I'm going to go into prefabs here. And let's say that my chicken is over here. Yeah, let's put it over here in this corner. So there is my lonely little chicken that I have to go and rescue. And where can I put in enemies? Well, I could put an enemy right here. Not a particularly dangerous enemy, but it does threaten this little corner right here. Let me move him forward a little bit, so he's threatening this intersection a little bit more. And I could put in, let's say, at least, oops, 3 other enemies here. Now, if I left it like this, this would be a fairly boring level. First of all, they're all pointing in the same direction. They're all rotating at the same speed. And yeah, nothing's going to work, by the way, because there's several other things that we have not done to this level yet. You can see there, they just freeze and don't chase me. But it would be fairly boring and easy to manage to make it over here to the chicken. And also, I just got reminded of a prefab that we forgot to build. So rather than having something this boring, I am going to grab one of these walls here and use this to help me make some more interesting, oops, that's not the name I meant to grab, interesting levels. So I am, let's keep you on a grid. Thank you very much. Place this over here, and I'm also going to increase the scale. Let's say, no, not on X. Thank you. Stop that. Change my Y scale to 3 so that it's an actual wall. And then I can duplicate that wall, and let's say okay, let's rotate this wall like so. Let's get you back on -14, and let's position this wall here. And then I'll take this wall, not position it like that, and say maybe position it right here. So now I've got some spaces. So like I can come through here. This guy's just sort of a pay attention player type of thing. I could take this dangerous route along this edge here, trying to slip past these guards. Or I could wait a moment and slip in over here. And then slip past through here, using this wall to shield me from this guard. Yeah, give the player some options. Now, I also want to put a little bit of difference to these orientations. So maybe I'll have him start like this. I'll have this guard start like this. I think he can stay like that. And also to maybe make things a little bit more interesting, I can adjust, since we did expose these variables, the rotation speed. So let's make this guard rotate a little bit slower. And let's make this guard rotate a little bit faster. So now I have 3 different rotation speeds. So that way their rotations aren't going to look quite so synchronized. Now, before we can truly test our level here, couple of things that we need to do. Some things I don't need to do, but I'm going to do anyways. The thing that I don't need to do is I want to put all of my enemies into one collection. That way I can just keep track of them. So create empty underscore enemies, reset its position, and dump all of my enemies into this group, so I can keep track of them a little bit better. My tiles need to be marked as static. So I'm going to go ahead and mark all my children as static now. So all of those are static. I'm going to need to do some baking. So to do that, I need to save this. So I'm going to save this under scenes. And I'm going to call it main level. I am going to generate my lighting to get rid of the absurdly dark shadows that I have. And again, if you for some reason closed out your lighting tab, it is under Window, Rendering, Lighting. And now that we have a few extra objects in here, it will take it a moment to recalculate the lighting. Although it is taking unusually long for such a simple level. There we go. Now everything's nice and bright and visible again. And by the way, since we are doing things quick and dirty, it is entirely possible that you will get really weird broken lighting, like these really weird shade marks that I have on these stone bricks. Don't worry about that. That is not something we are concerned about fixing. I also need to bake my navigation. So I'm going to go to navigation. Again, if you've closed out that window, it's under Window, AI, Navigation. Switch to the Bake tab and bake it. Take a quick look to make sure that everything looks correct. I've got little islands around these walls. Yep, everything looks fine on the baking. And then, because I forgot to copy something over, things aren't going to work yet. If I get caught, I break. In other words, invalid cast exception. Specified cast is not valid. We didn't move over the UI. So if I come over here and look at the scene variables, I have nothing linked to my UI objects. So I need to make sure I have this scene saved. Go back to my test scene. And I need to create a prefab out of my canvas. I'm going to go into my prefabs folder, create a prefab of the canvas, go back into my scene, open up the main level. Yes, I do want to save my test level. And put my canvas back in. Remember, whenever you create a prefab out of canvases, the event system does not come along for the ride. So if you have UI elements, you do have to manually add in the event system. So I would have to right-click UI and event system. If you don't have this event system, the buttons and whatnot on the UI is not going to work. We don't have any buttons at the moment, but you would need to make sure that you add that in. Now it should be testable. Hit the run button. Make sure I can lose. Remember that I forgot to relink things up in scene variables. So victory goes there and loss goes there. I shall never find my chicken. And by using the walls, I was able to dart right on through. And yay, I found the chicken in one. And then one last test, because I didn't actually test it. Can I escape? Sort of run along all of these walls here. And it would appear that no, I cannot escape. And I also probably need to put some more walls in because that was way too easy. And there we go. I have a basic stealth action game where I can evade the evil rotating detectors of doom and rescue my chicken. Now, there's a lot that we can do with this to make this a bit more interesting. And we'll take a look at that in some of the bonus videos. But as far as the overall general thrust of this project goes, it is complete. We can make a level, we can place multiple enemies in it, we can place a goal in it, we can win, we can lose, we are done. If you found this video, or even indeed the entire sequence, useful, a like would be appreciated. And if not, the dislike button is right next to it. Until the next tutorial sequence.